We good after the big bash? Nobody had too much fun? Everybody made it to the keynotes, right? Awesome. Welcome. So welcome to day 2. This is the build track. If you guys weren't in here at all with me yesterday, my name's Justine, and I will be the MC, so you're stuck with me all day. We have just one talk before lunch, but as you heard, we are now doing a replay of a talk that was pretty heavily attended yesterday, and so we wanted to give people the opportunity to actually see it. So that will be in this room as well, but typical lunch options are also available. So first off, some housekeeping stuff. I know everybody likes to sit on the end of the rows, but if you guys do not mind moving in and getting a little cozier, it makes it a lot easier for people who are coming in towards the end to find a seat. And then also, please put your phones on silent so the speakers don't get distracted. That'd be awesome. And this morning we have Diogo, who actually has traveled all the way from Brazil to tell us a little bit about DevOps at AGCO. So he actually lives life by the motto that life is too short to create crappy products and drink bad beer. He's also quite the comic book artist as well, so you'll be able to see that in his slides. And AGCO is not your traditional farming equipment company, and Diogo is actually going to walk you through the DevOps journey and how they've gotten to an automation-obsessed DevOps culture. So, Diogo, you ready? All right, let's give it up for Diogo.
Oh, yeah, you can hear me. Hi, folks, how are you doing? Well, as you already know, my name is Diogo, and what I do is I build tractors. I build combines. I build sprayers. I build implements, which is the fancy name for all the stuff we plug into those machines. I also build engines and generators. I build silos. And I build technology to link all that stuff together. So one of the things you may be wondering is, what does a nerd like me with a business card like this, who describes his day-to-day work as an epic battle against complexity like this, what does a nerd like me goes to at a company like AGCO? Oh, and by the way, whose teammates describe my work like this? I just love this vision of me because in this vision I still have hair, so yeah, it's pretty complimentary. But what does someone like me does at a company like AGCO? So to better answer that question, let's understand a bit about AGCO. I've just showed you our product line, a good chunk of it. What you may not know is AGCO is a big company in that field. We own multiple brands, multiple well-known brands such as Massey Ferguson, Valtra. And we are fairly young by marketing standards. We just turned 25, which is young for this market. But actually, AGCO is based on companies that have a much longer history, such as this one. This one is Alice Chalmers. This is an ad by Alice Chalmers dating back to the 30s. And Alice Chalmers has the coolest fun fact about AGCO that I know. Do you know who this guy is? Yeah. We had Nikola Tesla working at AGCO for about 3 years. So I've been telling HR guys, just say that when you're hiring for IT. Just that would be enough. So all that stuff considered, we must be very old school, right? Very traditional. And not really. So agriculture requires constant innovation. And just to give you some examples on engineering, for example, we have patents for CVT, for that shiftless transmission dating back to the 70s. Market was just able to have it by the 90s. We have apps for tracking machinery out there in the field. We've been having those for a good while. The latest and greatest installment is EcoMand. This 2010 was the year of the release, but it's got, of course, new versions since then. And there's this all big buzz about, driverless vehicles. We've had those for a while. Latest, biggest instance of that happened in 2011 with something that we call Guide Connect. But that's not all. And what drives us towards this sort of innovation is what you can see here. So this graph shows how farmers throughout history have been able to feed more and more people. So if you take a look at 60 years from 1950 to 2010, we've had a tenfold increase in productivity out there in the field. So right now, by 2010, a farmer can on average feed 155 people. And if you have a look at that, for example, you'll see some of the stuff I just mentioned, such as auto guidance there in the 90s, as big drivers towards getting more productivity out of our fields. And if you have a look at the big big thing that we're going to get in 2020. There you see, integrated, actionable intelligence drives growth. So a big part of what we're doing now is trying to integrate it all. So we're talking about modernizing, and as people love to say that software is eating the world, software is eating this world as well. So this is a big part of our offering. This is highly strategical for us. So long story short, it is highly technical, and proper DevOps is not an option for us anymore. So to better understand our journey or trajectory towards DevOps, better start on 2012 when we had nothing on that sense. So we were very software factory driven, and that means that we had those very strict contracts that were carried out by vendors. We basically delivered those contracts with some very poorly specified requirements. Vendors would give us back software that was poorly implemented in turn. And we had to put in place a lot of control to avoid, to reduce the amount of pain we had. So we had very little control over what we had in terms of final deliverable because all of that was delegated. We had very little ownership. So if a production problem happened, we would have to contact the vendor. We were hostages to that situation. And we had to introduce a lot of overhead, lots of governance and all that corporate-wide stuff so that we would have at least some, gate checks allowing some minimal level of quality before reaching production. Just to give you a couple of examples, those two, they are in Portuguese, by the way. Those two are two deployment instructions. One of them is 20 pages long, the other is 34 pages long, and it describes stuff like, go into that XML file, edit this part, or maybe even go into that ASP file and edit this conditional here. This caused us a lot of trouble. So just to give an example, these are some of the metrics that I'm using to describe how we progress throughout this journey. For us to create a new non-production environment to test stuff, it would take us more than 30 days. For us to do a deployment, it would take us over 12 hours. And guys, as you well know, this is personal life impact. We have to do that on our off hours. Nobody likes doing that. At least I don't. And due to those things, we were able to deliver to production about 4 times a year. So, and also to give an example, and this is one of the first things I faced when I joined ACO, people would start developing and put in place in a development environment, and they would figure out that some part of that was not stable, and they would move just what they thought was stable into QA, but there was no proper control on deployment artifacts, so that was done manually, and QA was different from dev. And also in QA, people would find problems on some parts of everything that was delivered. Yet another manual intervention, it would hit production, it would simply not work because some stuff was out. So people introduced that pre-prod environment to mimic production, one more step, 12 hours to deploy on top of it. It was one of the very first things we killed when we started implementing proper DevOps. So long story short about 2012, and the key takeaway here is that if you have low ownership, you end up with low quality. You have to put in place lots of bureaucracy in place, and you encourage your business to go search for shadow IT, which will cause you to have low ownership, low quality bureaucracy. That's a never-ending cycle. Sorry, got the peek? So 2013, that's when we really got started. First thing, new ground rules. So the very first thing was all the source code that's developed for Echo now belongs to Echo and is managed within Echo. All the tracking, everything is not done at the vendor level anymore. It's done within our house. So in order to execute that vision, we introduced Bitbucket. We got a cloud offering because it was a very quick way for us to turn that stuff around. We introduced Jira, and we introduced Jenkins for builds and SonarQube to track quality. This was done at a very gradual way, throughout the year, and we had one single big focus, which was ownership. So if you remember the graphics before, we had low ownership. 2014 was about getting ownership back. So this is an example of a Jenkins dashboard. We also have development, QA, production all over there. And as you can see, we start getting some benefits because our deployments were reduced by half. We start having deployments that would last about 6 hours. Still not good, but a lot better, and we were able to deploy more frequently throughout the year. So some of the highlights was we were able to have very broad adoption, especially with Jira. We were able to cover lots of business needs with that as well. We were able to standardize the process, but there was this biggest lowlight. This was done in South America first, so it was very regional. We had lots and lots of vendor attrition because those guys were still used to the old way of doing things. New ground rules required us to chase for new vendors. And we messed a lot with Jira. We customized it too much, so it became a pain to handle and to manage down the road. 2014, the year we went global. So we want to take all those good things and expand them and have this global set of tools and practices. So what was it that we introduced by then? And as you can see, our focus now was increasing control and reduce overhead. So what we introduced then was we introduced Stash, we introduced Bamboo, we introduced Confluence, and we also have some open source projects, so there's a bit of GitHub and, a bit of GitHub. And we introduced Flyway for database refactoring. So, and some of the strategies were, we opted to have different levels of engagement. So if you're doing Agile, if you can do proper CI and CD, here's all the stuff you need. Go play with it. Be happy. If you're more waterfall, you want to have more steps, more governance, etc. Yeah, you can still play around with the stack. There's still stuff there for you. We worked with a very limited team size on the side of delivering ALM. This was a big challenge for us. We learned from past mistakes that we should keep our configuration as simple, as vanilla as possible. And we had to go into major global training to actually show people how to use stuff like Jira. This, for example, comes from our global trainings. This shows how we planned and start using Jira to track it all. Documentation, a bit of that is in Box for waterfall. This was a documentation for waterfall projects, but Agile projects use Confluence. Stash for source control, as I just mentioned, Bamboo, and some Zephyr for testing. Some of the cool stuff that we were able to introduce was we started implementing automated deployments, re-automated deployments across environments. We still had some gate control before hitting production. I just missed the labels there, sorry. And that caused a number of benefits for us. So for example, we were able to create new environments within 2 hours. We were able to do deployments on lunchtime. 1 hour, still not too good, but much better. And we're able to deploy as frequently as we need throughout the year. Some of the stuff that really worked well was, well, we were able to do, to have global adoption on this. It was easy to turn it around. The choice of an Atlassian stack actually allowed us to quickly benefit, spin up all those instances and have them working. I come from 10-year background DevOps. I've used to do a lot of that, for example, with Jenkins, and the amount of effort that I would have to put in place to code stuff, to write scripts, to link it all together, the way you have this deep integration between Jira, Stash, and Bamboo, it was a lot of effort, and we're able to just bypass it by using standard features in the tools. And on the lowlights, the same kind of problem we had with vendors in South America now became a global problem. So now vendors who were not used to an old way of doing things, who didn't really understand DevOps, for example, well, there was lots of clash throughout the year. It was an interesting year. And one more thing, we're a very small team, as I just mentioned, so we have a very limited amount of experts on DevOps, ALM, etc. So that meant that we became a bottleneck at multiple occasions, as much as we tried not to. This year, so that's where we introduced some cool new toys. We actually introduced Docker by the end of 2014. We were happy enough to be selected by Docker as beta testers for Docker Hub Enterprise. It's now called Docker Trusted Registry, so it means that we have our own Docker registry in-house, and it supports our build pipeline. We introduced another thing was we got this open source project called Doku and BuildStep, and which allows us to have an on-premise build behavior just like Heroku. So people just configure their repos the way they want, they push it, and we automatically discover the stack to be used. So if it's Java, if it's Groovy, if it's Maven or Gradle, if it is Node, we'll just discover the stack and build it on time. So it means we have a share nothing DevOps stack. It means also that people can run the very same kind of build within their machines. And please, folks, ask me for details on that. I just love that topic. So we use Docker and build packs. We continued using GitHub for open source stuff, and we expanded it with lots of things that are available for open source projects, such as Travis. We deepened our usage of SonarQube, and DevOps doesn't stop by the moment you reach production. DevOps is about guaranteeing continuous quality in your production environment as well. So for that, we introduced also log entries for log aggregation, both for our cloud stuff as well as our on-premise stuff. And we've introduced New Relic for monitoring. This is a diagram of a training material that was prepared a while back. And I say a while back because some stuff has changed. For example, we are dropping Vagrant. We are using Docker Machine and Docker Compose. It just fits our needs just perfectly. So, Puppet so far has had very little adoption within the company because we were so radical in adopting Docker as a main driver that the case for Puppet is very, very thin these days. The idea is that our deployment stack supports deploying to both cloud and on-premise on a very similar way. And Docker, build packs, and Doku are at the heart of stack discovery, as I just mentioned before. So what was the cool stuff? What was the bad stuff? First was, it's very easy now to set up a development environment. Developers onboard us, and once they have their systems running Docker, they can start coding. So it usually takes a developer a couple of hours to start coding. Understand the whole crazy architectural stuff that we do, that's another story. But getting the environment ready is really quick. The other cool thing, too, is that if a build breaks, nobody has to go into the build server because all of that's Dockerized, so they can run the very same build steps within their machines. So if someone reaches out to me and says, Diogo, build is broken, what can I do? I just say, man, run it on your box. It's literally Docker Compose, run web npm test, for example, for Node projects. So environment setup became a lot easier, and this whole thing of allowing people to basically configure their builds by just configuring their repos empowers development teams. We firmly believe that having a separatized DevOps organization within your company is kind of an empty pattern. DevOps belongs to the development team, belongs to all the teams. So what we do as DevOps specialists, some of us, what we do is we coach people and we try to leverage good tools that people can use in their day-to-day projects. But there were lowlights, as I just said. We had some people that specialize in DevOps, and those people are very few in our company. This is a lot of new stuff, as I just mentioned before. There's lots of bleeding edge. DTR was released officially like a couple of months ago. So we are right now very resource constrained. We're still very resource constrained. It's always a challenge. So, and I went fast. So let me wrap up with some closing thoughts for you folks, and that will give us some time for a good Q&A, hopefully. Please ask questions. First thing to consider is I've been to countless events when people talk about DevOps, and we always fall in love with the stack of some other company, frequently not realizing that that stack is a good fit for that company, not necessarily yours. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution here. The stuff that we are doing here fits our case, fits our business needs. It may not fit yours. So I'm really distrustful about any sort of offering that says, yeah, this is just DevOps in a box. Just get it, install it, you're done. Don't believe that, please. Second thing, and still quite related to that, is that DevOps does not happen in the void. So you have to take in consideration a lot of things, such as what is the architecture within your company? What is the culture within your company? What are the governance rules within your company? All of those are either constraints or enablers for you to specify and create a good DevOps strategy. DevOps is born out of Agile, and Agile preaches baby steps. Do everything in a continuous improvement way. do it in baby steps. So instead of planning a big, huge DevOps big bang, please don't. Always consider what is it that you can do this week that's going to improve you and get you in a better position on the next one. Next one, you don't want to be that guy. And what I mean with that is two things. First of all, it relates to that whole idea of having the separate DevOps organization, have DevOps specialists that everybody goes to because you become a bottleneck. There's some stuff you can do. One of them, that can help you a lot, I should have mentioned that before, is you can be smart about who is it that you partner with, both in terms of vendor, who is going to develop code for you in case you are offshoring anything, but also in terms of support. So one of the big lessons learned that we had was when we created the global instance, after all the trouble we went through with the South America instance, we actually hired the specialized Atlassian team. The guys are here. That allowed us to really focus on DevOps and let people who are really specialists about Atlassian help us with, what is the best way that I can structure my user rights in Bamboo, for example. Another thing is DevOps is the one place in which you can get your hands dirty. So who in here does DevOps, by the way? Cool. Who in here has written some dirty bash script to solve some DevOps? Yeah, right there with you, folks. Yeah, we just don't share it, right? I don't share it. I would love to have some sort of anonymous commit in Stash so that I could push that and nobody would know it was me. Last but not least, DevOps, and this comes from the Godfather, right? DevOps is about offering people stuff, offering people a way out of the crazy approach that we had in the past. So there are lots of ways to get to there, but what you really want to do is make people an offer they cannot refuse. And what I mean with that is, it's not authority. It's not about saying you got to do this. It's just about providing enough incentive, enough motivation, enough good stuff in the way that will make people just go towards your solution. Thank you.
All right, good job, Diogo. So you actually have several questions, if you don't mind.
Awesome.
So the first one to start off is, what was the main driver of your decision to migrate from Jenkins to Bamboo?
Awesome question. Quick turnaround. Bottom line, quick turnaround. We also use GitFlow. We use a lot of GitFlow and native support for GitFlow within Bamboo branch discovery. It's just one of the cool, awesome things that we had in there. It was really quick to turn around. I have to admit, I was one of the people who originally voted for Jenkins because it was something I knew. But when we had a closer look at Bamboo, we were all convinced that that was the way to go.
Awesome. And how do dev teams introduce a new tool into your DevOps toolchain?
Sorry, how was it?
How do dev teams introduce a new tool into your DevOps toolchain?
Good question. Usually by just speaking with us. I mean, a lot of the tool chain is, you can get a lot of the tool chain by just using the build packs. So for example, we prefer to use Gradle for Java-based builds instead of Maven. But if you want to use Maven, you can just do it because there are build packs that support it. So if you're using anything that Heroku supports, our stack will support as well. If it's something beyond that, just come and talk with us and we'll extend it. So what we've been doing is, since we're very resource constrained, we try to focus to do our innovation through projects. So we have this big backlog of DevOps stuff we want to do, and we're constantly looking for projects in which you can go say, yeah, let's do it, this thing here at that project. So that's where most of that stuff comes from.
And can you expand more on your thoughts about local development?
About what, sorry?
Local development?
Local development. I didn't quite understand the question, so...
Somebody's in the audience who asked that. Do you want to expand a little bit? If not, you
all right, so I'll try my interpretation of it. I'm going to answer that as building stuff locally, etc. I think it's fundamental. I think it's fundamental, and I think you need to locally be able to run stuff just like you would run in production. So yesterday there was this talk about Docker, and a big part of our motivation to go to Docker was around that. The way we have structured things is you can just run a single Docker compose command, and you can create all the images that you need. So just to give an example, we have an ongoing project in which a single Docker compose command is going to spin up a Node API, a Groovy API, a Redis image, a MongoDB image, and a bunch of fake servers. All of those related and will run end-to-end tests at developer machines, the same way it runs in Bamboo, so that really empowers the team. So as for local development, yep, I think it's fundamental.
And I have a question in here, actually, to expand on that, that asks how Docker is different from Bamboo. So for those who maybe missed the Docker and CI talk yesterday, do you mind giving a brief?
Great question. Docker is about containerization. So Docker, think of Docker images as something very akin to a virtual machine. It's about that. Docker is about packaging stuff. So Docker is not a build tool, even though there's a Docker build command. A Docker build command is basically a command that causes you to push stuff into a container, into this small image that can be shared. So Docker is about packaging. So you can think of Docker as an alternative to packing a virtual machine. There's DevOps people who like to use Linux packages such as deb files to package stuff. That's where Docker comes in place. So Docker and Bamboo are complementary to one another. Docker is the way you pack your stuff. Bamboo is the tool building the thing that will go into those packages and driving the deployment of those guys across a pipeline.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I agree. So that is actually all the questions we have today, unless anybody has anything else from the audience, because we do have about 4 minutes left. If not, I will let you go early. All right. So don't forget to take the survey for Diogo and let him know how he did. And just as a reminder for lunchtime options, I'll throw the slide up there too, but we have the same options as yesterday. In addition, we also have the encore presentations of some of the overflow presentations. So in here, we will have a encore on Jira 7 ecosystem from Dave Meyer, and it will be at noon. So if you would like to catch that, please swing back by here at noon. If not, we've got Speechless in Yerba Buena Salon 7 through 9, which is where you can hop up on stage and give a presentation on slides you've never seen before, which